It's Friday, and you know what that means. The Hudson Media Group proudly brings to you the latest edition of Talking Politics. And certainly, I am the generational talent in Garden State Media and your leader for trustworthy journalism. That's right, folks. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Hope you're all staying warm during these very frigid days here. And certainly, there's always a lot to discuss. So let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Now, folks, it's been in the news cycle for at least a couple of weeks, and certainly while we are at the early stages of 2026, the next census isn't for another 4 years. But for conservatives like myself, maybe some rosy days are ahead of us as we're seeing some blue states will be losing some congressional seats, and that's always a good thing when it comes to maintaining a conservative majority in the House of Representatives. So let me just unpackage this a little bit for you, but reported this past week in the New York Post, New York and California is slated to lose a combined 6 House seats after what is presumed to be the next census in 2030, according to early figures based on census data. Now, Democrat strongholds like New York and California are expected to lose a massive amount of D.C. voting power after what many think is the 2030 census, as hundreds of thousands of residents are fleeing the high cost of living in New York, which has been driven by decades of left-leaning policies, according to experts and housing experts alike. Now, New York and California could easily lose 10% of their congressional representation after the next census is conducted in 2030, with the Empire State poised to lose 2 seats and California expected to drop 4 seats, according to a new analysis of census numbers from the redistricting network that showed both state populations are shrinking, if not outright stagnating. Now, Republican strongholds like Texas and Florida, meanwhile, are expected to win big after the 2030 census, with population growth driving likely 4 seat gains apiece, which is, again, a 10% increase in representation for the Lone Star State, and of course, a whopping 14% increase for the Sunshine State. Coincidentally, both states do not have a state income tax, and coincidentally also, too, they're governed by better governors, as we all come to learn. 5 years later, and as we approach 6 years later after the pandemic, folks, red state governors got it right over the blue state governors. But let me not digress here. Now, of course, many experts think that the culprit behind the failure to rebound, of course, and the ensuing loss in national influence is, of course, high taxes, high rents, and, of course, the high cost of living. Folks, look no further than across the river in New York City. Despite the election of Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani, well, folks, we're all going to, see that the chickens come home to roost when it comes to bad economic policies. Of course, high cost of living, property taxes, you name it, folks, that's not going to change in the Empire State, and much less in California, where Governor Gavin Newsom, of course, has almost bankrupted the state with giving healthcare to illegals, and of course, like no interest loans to illegals as well. Folks, trust me, these blue states are headed for an economic cliff. Now, of course, both New York and California have struggled to rebuild populations since the massive flight right after COVID. Of course, as we know, during the 2020 pandemic, but of course, both are still down about 200,000 residents as of 2025, recently, according to U.S. Census Bureau data that has been discovered. As I just mentioned, Texas and Florida, on the other hand, have gained approximately 400,000 and 200,000 residents, respectively. Now, Americans continue to vote with their feet, fleeing blue states and moving to red states, according to New York State GOP spokesman David Laska. Quote, who can blame them? One-party Democrat rule has made New York the most taxed, least affordable, least free state in the United States. Even New York City has struggled with less than a quarter of the roughly 500,000 people who fled during the pandemic have yet to return as of 2025. Now, the state as a whole is stagnant, gaining just 1,000 residents between July 1st of 2024 and July 1st, 2025, to bring its total population to 20 million, according to the latest estimates. Now, folks, what's interesting about this, and also, too, again, while people used to pour into New York City from across the country or even around the world to work in the center of the universe, staggering rent prices have crippled New Yorkers. Almost at an average of $5,600 per month as recently as December have prompted many to abandon the Empire State for cheaper and even sunnier pastures in Texas and in Florida. New Jersey has apartments with cheaper rentals, but guess what? New Jersey has just become a dormitory for the state of New York. Now, the House of Representatives' seats are capped at 435, and the number of seats per state changes every 10 years based on the population changes in the census. Now, New York's projected loss is nothing new. The state has lost seats every 10 years since 1950. going from its 1940s height of 45 to the current 26. And if populations hold flat or drop, 2030 could leave the state with its weakest sway on the national state in decades. If trends continue, New York will have fewer residents in 2030 than in 2020. California, meanwhile, lost one House seat in 2020 after a century of gains. Now, folks, again, for those of you that are history buffs and American government fanatics like myself, certainly when we look at the Electoral College map every 4 years, yes, we always look at solid blue states like New York and California, which, let's be honest, folks, have been reliably Democrat for decades now. So when we look at the National Electoral College vote, the only reason it's even remotely competitive for Democrats is because they can always rely on states like New York and California. Now, whether it's, let's be fair. Whether or not illegals are voting in elections, we can debate that on a different day. But there's no question that the reason that the Electoral College map is always closed is because of these states. Well, hopefully that gets to change soon. As we know, New York State obviously has over 26 electoral votes, while California right now is at 54. You start narrowing those down and make those states a little more competitive, well, Democrats might start to panic. But folks, here's another outlier that I think is important to talk about. And it's something that, let's be honest, well, it's really one of those things that always makes me laugh about, at least for the most part, the way we incorporate illegals into the census. And I came across a really good piece from the Immigration Reform Law Institute. And this isn't like decades old. This is actually, it's pretty recent here, from May of 2024. And shout out to Dale Wilcox, a great scholar at this specific nonprofit. Now, the counting of illegals as part of the U.S. Census is one of the most under-discussed aspects of illegal immigration, but it represents a major threat to the future of American democracy. That's true. It's not just some talking point that Elon Musk conveys on Twitter, folks, but it's very true. As currently constituted, the census counts everyone currently living in the United States, regardless of their citizenship or legal status. Now, the results establish the number of electoral votes and congressional seats allocated to each state. So while illegals and all non-citizens are legally banned from voting in federal elections, well, that remains a little bit of a debate. They are still allowed to legally impact elections through the census, given that more than 7 million illegals have entered the U.S. over the past 3 years. We can expect illegals to have an outsized influence on both the Electoral College and the House of Representatives after the counting of the next census in 2030. Now, we all know, folks, that the Trump administration has been trying and lobbying the Supreme Court to try to revisit some court cases. Now, in early 2016, a unanimous decision by that Supreme Court in early 2016, which included basically, folks, a 5-4 slightly conservative majority, if you can even call it that, in 2016, felt that illegals should be included in census data. Now, again, why is that important, folks? Well, very simply, the reason Democrats fight so hard and scratch and claw for illegals to be included is because it helps their voter base. Now, again, if you only include citizens that can vote into the census data, that changes the conversation completely. Folks, it's no coincidence that Democrats, whether it's in shitholes like Minnesota or New York or California or in blue states in general, fight so hard to keep illegals not just, dependent on government, but also on the voter rolls, is because, again, it allows them to have a considerable influence in the voter demographics. Now, I'm not saying that this fixes the problem completely, but let's be fair, folks. You have less illegals in states when it comes time to count the census and it comes time to count people living in them. Well, it might change dramatically. So it's no coincidence that, again, whether it's states like Minnesota with inept, fraudulent, and let's be honest, corrupt governors like Tim Walz, or Gavin Newsom in California, or for some time, Andrew Cuomo in New York, and now Kathy Hochul, obviously, was the governor succeeding Andrew Cuomo. No surprise, folks, that all these nonprofit groups and all these organizations that advocate for illegals on a consistent basis, of course, are outraged about whether or not we should have illegals count into the census. Now, whether or not the Trump administration and Attorney General Pam Bondi will revisit these court cases, well, I think it's a good time as ever to do that, while you have control of both chambers of the legislature. And if you want to pass a law, that'd be great to do that. Now's the time to do this. And folks, and that doesn't make me racist or it doesn't make me a nationalist. I just simply want people living here legally to count in the census. The idea that, listen, whether it's Ruth Bader Ginsburg and, I mean, obviously, she's no longer on the Supreme Court, thankfully, and ideologically. But other liberal justices have been very, very adamant about, hey, well, you know what? It's fine to count illegals into the census and into this apportionment. I would argue, and I would cry foul on this. I think only citizens should count in the census data. Only citizens should count in the sense of how much we have with House representation. Folks, again, I can't say it enough. It's no coincidence that Democrats in blue states fight so hard for illegals. They want to incorporate them into the census. They want to change the voter demographic. Folks, it's no coincidence, again, whether it's in Minnesota and you saw a great influx of Somalians in the last decade during the Obama administration and other states, folks, there's a reason for that. Democrats want these numbers. It helps their voter base. If it's only citizens being counted in the census and ultimately citizens voting, that doesn't benefit Democrats. It only reduces their influence in the House of Representatives. Now, not just what I mentioned before, folks, about affordability. It just seems like a lot of blue states are unaffordable. Take New Jersey, for example. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this is not being bigoted or xenophobic or racist, but this is the truth, folks. New Jersey spends over $7 billion a year to accommodate illegals here in New Jersey. Now, we can have the argument if you want about what illegals are entitled to, but what I can tell you is that on the taxpayer dime, we shouldn't be spending money or our taxpayer dollars on providing certain amenities to illegals. And we do that consistently. New Jersey is a one-party state. It's been like that for some time. Now, we've had Democrats control the legislature in Trenton for over 20 years. And now we're entering a third consecutive term of a Democrat as governor here in the Garden State. Now, we'll see when Mikey Sherrill has to submit a new budget in February and what she's willing to cut costs on. But folks, for the last, I would say roughly 6 years under Phil Murphy, illegals were cashing in here when it comes to free healthcare at our expense and other amenities. Now, let me just give you not necessarily a civics lesson, but a lesson in economics. Now, unlike some of my fellow conservatives on my side of the aisle, I come with facts here. Now, when it comes to Medicaid and other amenities that illegals have access to, listen, it's factually inaccurate when you hear conservatives or Republicans at the national level or even pundits within establishment media or independent media talk about, well, illegals get Medicaid. That's not true. It just isn't. Now, what New Jersey does and what New York does and other blue states do is the Medicaid dollars coming from Washington are appropriated into a fund which allows illegals to receive health care. So if you just do a simple Google search, folks, and go to NJ Family Care, that essentially is a derivative of Medicaid dollars. So while illegals can't apply for Medicaid directly, that's true. That's not possible. And any Republican or conservative that tells you otherwise is just bullshitting you. I've researched this extensively, and I've talked about it on my other show, Real Talk with Jersey First TV. But here in New Jersey, folks, we spend $7 billion to accommodate illegals. And I don't know about you, but citizens like myself aren't happy about our tax dollars going to that. And we're seeing, never mind the fraud we're seeing in Minnesota, folks, under Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, and of course, corrupt members of the House of Representatives, which include Ilhan Omar. No coincidence, folks, it happens to be in Minneapolis and happens to be with a certain population from a shithole part of the world. That's not being racist. That's true. Simple Google search or on YouTube will tell you exactly what Somalia is. But whether it's Minnesota or other states, folks, they're bankrupting taxpayers at the expense of bending over backwards for illegals. But not just a monetary cost, folks, there's an electoral cost to this. And that's why Democrats fight so hard for illegals. They want to make sure that they're included in the census. They want to make sure that they're included as to when the census data is taken, everyone living in the census within a certain congressional district. And that benefits Democrats. Folks, trust me when I tell you, okay? If illegals were voting in mass numbers for Republicans, or trust me, Democrats would be the first ones talking about, illegal immigration and how we have to limit illegal immigration. They kind of sound like Democrats did in the late 90s, early 2000s. Don't believe me? Do a quick Google search. Go on YouTube and check out Chuck Schumer in the late 90s, early 2000s. Check out Hillary Clinton in the late 90s, early 2000s. Okay? Or Baba Feinstein from California. Okay? Or, I don't know, Dick Durbin out of Illinois. Folks, bottom line, Democrats sang a very different tune 30 years ago when it came to legal immigration. Certain Democrats that were presidents, like Barack Obama in 2010, 2009, as a matter of fact, too, or 2013, sang a very different tune about illegal immigration and the impact to our economies. Now, again, because they need that for a voter base, they're more than willing to accommodate. But here in New Jersey and across the river, New York, or in California, folks, the chickens are coming home to roost. Bad policies are making residents leave. Never mind the fact that New York and California is just not sustainable financially, folks. But we're seeing that. And we're seeing it in mass exoduses. Not just in great states like Texas and Florida. Again, no coincidence, no, as I mentioned before, no state income tax, and those states have better governors. Those legislatures govern better. It's as simple as that. They're not raising taxes at every whim. They're not rising, the cost of housing and gas and tolls. Those are all skyrocketing here in New Jersey, in New York, in Pennsylvania, in California. Folks, it's no coincidence why those states have lost electoral votes in the electoral map in states like Florida, Texas, Ohio, and Georgia are becoming more attractive destinations for everyday Americans. They're governed better, they spend wiser, and guess what? They're just fiscally more responsible. Can't say that here in New Jersey. Can't say that in New York or California. And again, folks, the chickens come home to roost at some point. Bad policies create bad choices. These bad choices are driving residents out of those states. So I, for one, I'm ecstatic to hear that California and New York are going to lose electoral votes, are going to lose House representation. Maybe it'll get Democrats, maybe it'll light a fire under their ass to start governing better and legislating better and not just pandering, which is what progressives and many on the left seem to live on. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. Now some local stories for your consideration, and a special thank you to fellow Rutgers alumnus, John Hines, also a member of the Pinnacle here in Hudson County, and of course the host of Hudson County View Live every Wednesday here with the Hudson Media Group for his reporting on this story, as former mayoral candidate Musab Ali is looking to challenge Ron Menendez in the 8th Congressional District in the upcoming 2026 primary coming up in June. Of course, candidate Musab Ali, with the endorsement of apparently former squad member Jamal Bowman, released a statement earlier this week about his declaration into this season's primary contest in the 8th Congressional District. This was really funny about Musab, right? And how full of shit he is. Check this out. Quote, "This is America. There are no kings, crowns, no heirs." Okay, that's true. Like, newsflash, you're not telling us anything new, Musab. But of course, leave it to Musab Ali to pander. "Public office should be earned through service, not inherited through connections. I'm running because NJ8 deserves leadership rooted in courage, not silence." He wasted no time in firing a shot at his opponent, who was elected in a blowout in 2022 after the Hudson County Democrat organization coalesced around him immediately after U.S. Representative Albio Sires decided to retire. Now, this was often attributed to the fact that Ron Menendez's father, then U.S. Senator Bob Menendez, who is now serving an 11-year prison sentence after getting convicted of corruption charges, still wielded some considerable political influence at the time in Hudson County. Quote, "America is wealthy enough to care for everyone. The only thing missing is the political courage to do it. This campaign is about choosing courage. For too long, Washington has asked working people to settle for less while billionaires and defense contractors get everything. I'm running to flip that script. This campaign is about choosing people over profits, democracy over dynasties, and communities over corporations." Oh, spare me the bullshit, Musab, with the nice little catchphrases here. Menendez is favored as he has the backing of several colleagues in the House, which include, Slim over there, MacIver, in the 10th Congressional District here in New Jersey, along with Bonnie Watson-Coleman, the HDDO, and U.S. Senator Andy Kim, who succeeded his father, coincidentally, in the United States Senate. Nonetheless, Bowman, who served in the House between 2021 and 2025, is backing the challenger. Now, let me just give you a little bit of a rundown here, folks, and here's the truth about why Musab Ali's candidacy is doomed to failure. A couple of things here. You would think that during the December runoff in Jersey City for mayor and for council seats, that Musab would have been hopefully working the room, talking to prominent progressives who were, at least in his mind, hoping to back him in a primary challenge against the incumbent U.S. Representative, Ron Menendez, in the 8th Congressional District. But here's what happened, folks. James Solomon won with a resounding mandate in December during the runoff. His entire council slate won, to where now James Solomon, as the mayor of Jersey City, has a 9-0 advantage on the city council. And other prominent progressives, as insufferable as they are, useless people like Ravi Bala, Katie Brennan, and others, of course, all endorse James Solomon, and they're all prominent progressives. But why expend your political capital in backing a guy who came in fourth during the recent mayoral race? Why would James Solomon? Now, one thing is, folks, in 2024, then Councilman James Solomon, who we all know probably didn't get along with Rob Menendez, was very eager to back his primary challenger, then useless Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala. Now, we all know that that was a feudal cause by then Councilman Solomon, but Solomon didn't lose anything by doing that. He's always been anti-establishment. James Solomon has always been a guy that likes to buck the system. Again, he won 2 elections for the city council running against the establishment in Hudson County and against the Democrat Party in Hudson County. So James Solomon didn't lose anything by endorsing Ravi Bala, as useless as Ravi Bala is, and still continues to be to this day. But he's mayor now. And let's be honest, folks, James Solomon rode in on an enormous amount of momentum, an enormous amount of optimism, and for you sports fans, with the wind to his back. Why would he waste any political capital on supporting someone like Musab Ali? It doesn't make sense for James. James is getting to work. He has a big budget deficit in Jersey City. Okay. And just in the first couple of weeks alone after taking office, he was facing a challenge with the recent snow removal. And guess what? He did the best work that he could. And shout out to him and shout out to the Jersey City Department of Public Works for trying to remove the snow as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Nothing is perfect, folks, and people will bitch and moan about, oh, the snow should have been shoveled quicker and removed and all this. And I get it, folks. People bitch to live and live to bitch. I mean, nothing new for Jersey City residents or other Hudson County residents. But here's the reality. James Solomon has a lot on his plate. And one of the things on his plate is not endorsing a losing candidacy like Musab Ali. It's no coincidence, folks, that former House Representative Andy Kim, who I'm sure got to know Rob Menendez during their time in the House, developed a rapport. And to no one's surprise, U.S. Senator Andy Kim decided to endorse Representative Rob Menendez. And I'm fairly certain that Newark Mayor, which, by the way, Newark happens to, well, portions of Newark happen to correspond within the 8th Congressional District. And mind you, when Ross Baraka decided to do that little publicity stunt in front of Delaney Hall and grandstand in front of ICE agents and cameras about, oh my God, an ICE facility in Delaney Hall, and oh my God, we're detaining illegals in Newark. Well, Ross Baraka stood there, and guess who stood next to him? U.S. Representative Rob Menendez. And as Ross Baraka got arrested, guess who was there showing solidarity for Ross Baraka? Rob Menendez. When LaMonica MacGyver, all whatever 400 pounds of her, decided to assault a federal agent, which in plain view, folks, don't take my word for it, go on YouTube, you can see it for yourself. Now, mind you, when you look at LaMonica MacGyver, the minute she sneezes, she's already assaulting you because of, the mass around her. And for Rob Menendez to even hold her back when she was being all ratchet and ghetto, I mean, folks, shout out to Rob Menendez. That's some very deceptive strength there. Now, I'm not sure if he does yoga, jujitsu, I don't know, whatever cardio he's doing. Folks, deceptively strong is Rob Menendez. Let me tell you something. To be able to hold back that behemoth, that's no easy task. All right? Now, when he's standing there with Ross Baraka, do you think Ross Baraka is not going to remember that? You think Ross Baraka mysteriously now, because he's a progressive and because, yes, he endorsed James Solomon, he endorsed Frank Gilmore, do you think mysteriously now Ross Baraka is going to endorse Musab Ali because he's a progressive? That's bullshit. No one's buying that. So prominent progressives within the area and the region are going to be backing Rob Menendez. Now, I would argue that there are some bad people giving Musab Ali political and career advice. In a wide open county commissioner race that we're seeing, right, with all 9 county commissioner seats up for grabs in the upcoming June primary, you would think that Musab Ali could have run for a county commissioner seat, which was much more attainable right now, considering the fact that I'm sure he had those sit-down conversations with James Solomon and Katie Brennan and Ravi Bala and other prominent progressives. And I'm sure in some polite way they told him, no, now is not your time to run. But again, Musab's ego got the better of him. And guess what? He's going to take a serious loss coming up this June. Yes, he can, tread out Jamal Bowman, if he decides to bring back Ilhan Omar to Jersey City to endorse him in some sort of public rally, if hopefully maybe by then, hopefully she's facing indictment for fraud over there in Minneapolis, because you all know, folks, Ilhan Omar is involved with that shit. Trust me when I tell you. Okay? So I don't know what prominent progressive is going to move the needle for Musab in this U.S. representative race in the 8th Congressional District. But again, folks, our egos can be our own worst enemy. And clearly that's the case here with Musab Ali. Trust me, it'll be an entertaining election to cover, but if anything else, maybe Musab has to learn the hard way that you need to sort of look at the short-term gains instead of sort of like looking so far down the road. You know what? If you can get an easy win now, especially with so many county commissioner seats available, you should have gone for those seats instead of the seat that you know just isn't attainable right now during this election cycle. Lastly, folks, while it's very frigid this week, guess what? Spring hopefully will be around the corner. And I want you to mark it on your calendars because on Friday night, April the 17th, we'll be partying at the world-famous Son Cubano, located along the waterfront in West New York at 40-4 Riverwalk Place, to bring you Memories Matter to benefit Alzheimer's New Jersey. Now, I'm proud to participate and volunteer with Alzheimer's New Jersey for some years now. And a shout out to their president and CEO, Ken Zanes, and their executive board for their belief not just in my media brand, but for partnering with me every spring season to bring awareness about Alzheimer's and dementia. Now, once again, folks, mark it on your calendars on Friday night, April the 17th, as DJ Ziggy Roman will be spinning the tunes that'll keep us all entertained and keep the vibe lively all throughout the evening. We'll have wonderful raffles, and of course, we have many local businesses sponsoring Memories Matter. Folks, I cannot say enough about what this event means to our community. As data will tell you, Alzheimer's and dementia is affecting especially the Hispanic and Latino communities alike in rapid numbers. So if we could do our part to raise awareness, raise funds, and most importantly, network and party for such an important cause, then we're doing something good. So once again, folks, hopefully the spring gets here before you know it. But in the meantime, mark it on your calendars for Friday night, April the 17th. Make sure you share the flyer on your social media, get some friends together, and make sure that you cultivate as much interest in this event as possible. We've been raising thousands of dollars since I started hosting Memories Matter for Alzheimer's New Jersey. It's an important cause for all of us, folks. And again, we can do something to help defeat Alzheimer's and dementia once and for all. So once again, mark it on your calendars for Friday night, April the 17th, starting at 8 p.m. and we'll be going all night long at the world-famous Son Cubano. I want to thank the Duran family and, of course, the staff and management there for allowing us to host Memories Matter at Son Cubano. So once again, folks, share it with your friends and family and come out and party for a great cause. And trust me, we can make a big difference in helping defeat Alzheimer's and dementia once and for all. And that's our show for this week. Once again, folks, to check out the leader in independent media right here in Hudson County, the Hudson Media Group, make sure you check out all of their great content by liking them on Facebook and following them on Instagram and X. And don't forget to click on the bell on the YouTube page and you'll be automatically subscribed to all the great content that we bring you every single week here with the Hudson Media Group, whether it's Talking Politics with Fernando Uribe, Hudson County View Live with John R. Highness every Wednesday, Stick at Night with Hudson County Commissioner Anthony Romano, and of course, all the great young men and women led by Greta Hernandez with North Bergen High School, bringing you content every single week. Folks, I can't say enough about how grateful I am to the president and CEO of the Hudson Media Group, Patrick O'Melia, for his belief in my media brand for some years now. Going back to April of 2019, we'll be celebrating 7 years on the air here with the Hudson Media Group. Again, I'm really, really spoiled with the great production staff and the management here that continue to believe in my brand of fearless, independent journalism. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, always remember, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's Talking Politics right here with the Hudson Media Group. I am the generational talent in Garden State Media and your leader for trustworthy journalism right here in Hudson County. That's right, folks. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Please party responsibly. Enjoy the WWE Royal Rumble. And of course, folks, we'll see you next week here on the Hudson Media Group.